Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll just be starting the we'll be starting the opening presentation now. Great. So great to see all of you here, and we're really looking forward to know a lot more from you based on your experience, especially in emerging markets. My name is Sombul, and I'm from the Climate Champions team. I'm also joined by my colleague Kapil here at the front of the table. Hi, Kapil. I'd just like to start with a short presentation on the sort of campaign from the high-level champions that has brought us together, and a bit more of context setting. So just to share a bit more, our high-level champion, Nigar Arpadarai, she'll be joining us later for closing remarks as well, virtually. She started her flagship campaign, Climate Proofing for SMEs, back in 2024. A lot of the focus of this campaign is on empowering SMEs with access to resources, financing, and the sort of training that's required to really proof them against the impacts of climate change. You'll be hearing a lot more from us on the campaign and also from a few campaign collaborators that we have in the room. Many of you, I see you here, and really excited to hear from you as well. So a bit more quickly on the campaign, we now have over 40 campaign collaborators across the globe, and we're reaching over 90 million SMEs across especially emerging markets. So great to sort of see the sort of collaborators we have with us. Regionally as well, we have a couple of collaborators from India, including WRI India, and a couple of other business associations as well on board. In terms of 2025, we'll also be looking at really enhancing the sort of access that we can provide to SMEs on finance and resources, and also regionalizing a lot of those networks and workshops, sort of capacity building efforts that we can do to bring together also large corporations as well as SMEs and sort of SME ecosystem enablers. In 2025, a lot of our focus, as I mentioned, is going to be on improving access to resources. Today, specifically, our discussion is a bit more focused on sort of connecting the financing angle with the resources and capacity building angle, and looking at how associations or ecosystem enablers can really help SMEs be empowered and be proofed against a lot of the diverse and multifold impacts of climate change. We'll also be focusing on, in 2025, understanding a lot more on what key stakeholders in this ecosystem really need to be doing. The key actions, for example, that development financial institutions, that SMEs and large businesses themselves, as well as commercial lenders and ecosystem builders can do. Many of you in the room also represent a lot of associations that work very, very closely with SMEs. So we're really looking forward to hearing a bit more as well on your role as connectors overall. On the left-hand side, you'll see a couple of very large numbers which are concerning, but we're very excited to understand how to maybe not just get them down, but work together on that. We know that overall the MSME or SME financing gap is really large. It becomes even larger when we include informal enterprises. And we also know that there are significant costs associated with supply chain risks and not managing the climate impacts in that. So together, what we're hoping to do today is to connect with many of you, understand what each sort of ecosystem player can do, and understanding that how does this all come together in 2026 and the way forward. Lastly, what I'd like to mention is that in 2025, our team will be working very closely with many of you in the room, as well as other campaign collaborators, to put together, in terms of an output, a SME finance playbook, which talks a bit more about the key actions that especially financiers need to take, and how SME ecosystem builders can help them do that through collaboration and partnerships. We'll also be looking at activation and alignment of the objectives in this work stream, especially at milestone events like London Climate Action Week, New York Climate Week, and of course COP30 in Brazil later this year. So we're really excited to discuss that with you, and also a bit more on what you see are the top key priorities that need to be pursued, not just today, but in the long term as well. Closing on this, what I'd like to say is that we would love to hear a bit more from you, especially, of course, from emerging markets, but also what sort of insights, success stories, or lessons that you've learned in your work streams that focus more heavily on engaging with SMEs, small businesses, and really working together, especially with partners, to empower them. Most of the discussion is going to be focused on the interconnection of financing, resources, and with climate change and its impacts. So with that, I'm going to be moving to the roundtable discussion session. And our first round of discussion will be moderated by my colleague Kapil. So I'll just ask Kapil to get started here. And thank you so much, everybody. We're really looking forward to hearing from you. Yeah.
Thank you, Sombul. It's a pleasure to see a very full room and several people waiting. I apologize, arranging some chairs. So starting from here, I would like to first of all welcome all of you who have joined us at this early hour. And I hope you've got a background setting on what we intend to do on climate financing for SMEs and the specific campaign which we are running. Now we are here only to listen from you. But I'll just highlight a couple of points before I start and call on each of you. So the first aspect is, we have about 57 million MSMEs here, of which 90%, excuse me, 90% of the business is done by SMEs. We see what are the challenges and outlining some of these. One is the high cost of capital. For largely in EMDEs with a over a percentage point or 2 to 3 percentage point difference for loans and financing. The second is SMEs don't have a credit history, which is a big issue for arranging collaterals for them. And lastly, there's high perceived risk from banks on whether these are actual risks or perceived risks. That is a mystery yet to be solved. And because of that, we are organizing this session. We are trying to see how can this finance gap of SME financing, which is about $6 to $8 trillion actually globally, how can this be reduced and overcome? So 2 ways, how do we improve access to finance for SMEs? And secondly, how do we tailor financial products to meet SME needs? So these are the sort of framing remarks, and then we'll open up the floor. And today we would like to discuss these 2 questions. How can deeper collaboration between financial institutions, large corporations and SMEs help enable us access to finance and with the context of building resilience and climate proofing? And the second is if you can bring out some examples from your experiences and some notable success stories, which you see in the financing space for SMEs for climate proofing. So I would like to now open the floor and just some guidelines. If you can make a 1-line introduction about yourself before speaking, and then make your intervention, which can be focused intervention. We'll have about 30 minutes for this, and we'll see how it goes from here. Thank you. So at the start, let me try and see if we have some of the specific invitees. Mr. Rajiv Chawla, is he joining us from IMSME of India? Mr. Amitosh Gautam, WRI India? Yeah, so sorry, we can't offer you a seat, but feel free to use the mic there.
Oh, perfect. This is working. So first of all, thank you very much. Very good morning. I am Amitosh Gautam, Senior Manager in the Climate Economics and Finance Program at WRI India. I am traveling from Ahmedabad to attend this program. And a very well thought exercise, because the work which we are currently doing is with MSMEs. We have identified, as the speaker has said in the opening remarks, that MSMEs definitely need finance, and we are talking about decarbonization, we are talking about transition, and the very pivotal point is finance. Without it, nothing works. And in our experience, we are working with MSMEs in Tamil Nadu. We are supporting them to transition from their current IC engine parts manufacturing to move to the EV part manufacturing, and a lot of challenges are there. So first thing which I wanted to start here is that we are dealing 99% with the micro enterprises, because that is the size. And if you see their challenges, they are phenomenal. People entrepreneurs are there, they know finance, but the bookkeeping, as you rightly pointed out, we had intense discussion with the associations. We identified that the bookkeeping practices needs to change. They are there, they are working in some way, but if you really wanted to leap yourself, to decarbonize, to move forward, how you will get the loan if you are not able to show yourself in a proper way? So that is the first thing which we wanted to attempt. We definitely want that the more climate finance, green finance should come to these units for their support and for their workers' support. It's not only that the owners is only getting the benefit. What about the workers who are getting transition? So those kind of capacity building programs have to be done. That is what we are attempting right now in Surat as well as in Tamil Nadu. And I will touch upon definitely at a later stage. But this is the brief introduction. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Gautam. I think you raised several important points specifically on bookkeeping for SMEs, which will enhance, their credibility. I now call upon Ms. Ekta Mehra and Rukmani Parthasarthi, welcome, from KFW to make the intervention.
Energy efficiency, etc. Rukmini here is the deputy director in our office. Maybe I'll let her continue with our different lines of credit, which we've done a lot of work with SIDBI.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rukmini Parthasarthi from KFW, German Development Cooperation. So we provide official development assistance on behalf of the government of Germany to India. One of the pillars of our cooperation has been in providing credit lines to SIDBI. We've worked with them extensively. What we have succeeded in developing with them is credit lines to refinance green investments. So energy efficiency, environmental improvements, those kinds of things. So yeah, we will be working with them on solar rooftop as well. We also have a credit guarantee facility, which we will be working with the Credit Guarantee Trust for micro and small enterprises. Again, this will be a guarantee facility dedicated for solar rooftop. So that we hope to provide a platform for enhanced green lending. Thanks.
Excellent. I think you touched upon some of the de-risking mechanisms, including providing credit guarantee schemes. I now call upon Mr. Ajit Agarwal from ADB to make his intervention.
Hi, I am Ajit from Asian Development Bank. I thought I was audible, but yeah. So, hi, I am Ajit from Asian Development Bank. I've recently joined the bank. I was previously in Pricewaterhouse and Women's World Banking, essentially looking at women and MSME financing. In ADB, of course, it gets broader because you have to look at from various angles. So I'm looking at more from a point of view of MSME and climate proofing green MSMEs. And although we have not done so much of work from a loan side, but we are trying to kind of support some organizations like NABARD, SIDBI, and MOMSME on the green MSME, on the TA side of it. Whereas we have done a lot of work in other markets like Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Cambodia, Indonesia, where we have created some green financing facility for MSMEs. My point of discussion here would be that because I come from in my family itself, there are a lot of MSMEs, proper SMEs who are into 4 or 5 different types of sectors: textile, paper, medical equipments. So what I do is I try to get a sense of how they understand climate proofing or how they understand green. Is there a standardization issue? Is there a definition issue? How can we make it more clear? Because a lot of global investors also have different benchmarks. Financial institutions have different benchmarks. MSMEs understand different language. So it's important, how do we kind of align those definitions, those parameters, and make it more easy and smooth. So I'll talk about it more during the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Ajit. I think the first aspect which stood out is everyone should speak a common language, and that's not only a challenge in the financing world, but in the decarbonization world itself. I see that you also have made a very important point that DFIs cannot do. They can't go too long without the support of the national banking system and the other players in the ecosystem. So it's a all stakeholder approach, where everyone has a different role. So thank you for highlighting this. I now turn to Ms. Swati Chaudhary from Women's World Banking.
Hi, I'm Swati. I'm a part of Women's World Banking. It's an international not-for-profit, and we work on gender and financial inclusion. So during the course of our work, and Amitosh spoke about micro, I'm going to go one level deeper, which or smaller. So it is right at the beginning, I think Sombul made the very important mention to informal enterprises. And so the journey starts from there, especially when you talk of, Kapil mentioned resilience being so important. So in our work, we look at what is required for women enterprises, but at the same time also look at the financial service provider lens, because at the end of the day, they have to be able to serve them sustainably. So currently the work we are doing, we are designing a women's climate resilience facility to scale climate solutions. And how do you work on that one critical point, which is solution delivery? So today, the point that we found is that financial service providers, very well intentioned, but are not set up to scale or to scale these solutions or serve this segment sustainably. There was this cost that we spoke about, saying it's very difficult the high perceived risk. So actually, it boils down from FSP side to underwriting costs. So we also work with CGT MSc on how to ensure that there is greater credit guarantees to women. So the way we are looking at it is, if we get, firstly, to have the right evidence, so that financial service providers can take a forward step. Second, to have the right risk-sharing mechanisms. And thirdly, in order for them to serve women customer segment and this segment of MSMEs sustainably, can you have a role of an aggregator, which not only plays aggregation facilitation, but the key role of financial intermediation. So I just wanted to share that, and I'd love to share more during the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Swati, once again. And when seeing the room, which is full of women, I think you have got your right audience. So also in terms of, we mentioned that risks should be shared and risk should be given or taken by who can actually manage that risk. It's not that bankers only should take the risk. So it's an important point. Moving on, we have Ritu Ahuja from the World Bank also. Yeah, hi Ritu, please go ahead.
To be part of a group which is so well informed. My name is Ritu Ahuja, and I work with the World Bank. I work with the Climate Change Finance and Economics Unit, and a large part of my work is essentially to work on using carbon markets as a way of mobilizing finance towards some of the smaller organizations, smaller countries. From the inputs that I have heard so far, some of them are very useful, and I realize that all of us are thinking on very similar lines in terms of what needs to be done. But as opening suggestions, I have two broad categories of how I would like to structure my input. One is that considering and building on what Sombul had mentioned, that the way that the MSMEs are in India, they are drivers of economic growth. They drive about 30% of the GDP, 45% of our exports. These are also entities that have high emissions because these are energy intensive, but also not always energy efficient. And that in turn leads to very high emissions from these organizations. Considering that these are drivers, considering that these are energy and emissions intensive, it is very important to have ways to not just mobilize finance towards these, but also to utilize that finance in a way that can help reduce emissions from these sectors. I want to build on my inputs from some of the work that the World Bank has done in Bhutan, which, as Sir, you mentioned, also has industry, which has 90% inputs coming just from the SMEs, which they call the cottage and small industries, and how they leveraged carbon markets as a way to mobilize finance to enable participation of some of the smaller project developers, but also use significant capacity building initiatives at the project level, so that smaller players who often find it difficult in terms of administrative cost, in terms of cumbersome processes to be able to participate in markets, and how those can then be facilitated and enabled. The second thing that I want to build on is, and something that our colleague from Women's World Banking has also mentioned, is on aggregation. One of the things that the World Bank has done in Bhutan is to facilitate the setting up of a Bhutan Climate Fund. Essentially what it does is that, considering that there are a lot of smaller players and a lot of small sectors where the projects are likely to come from, and prohibitively high costs in terms of participation and administrative cumbersomeness, what an aggregating platform like that does, that it provides, it allows for credits from smaller projects to be aggregated on a platform and then traded with international carbon markets at a price which is fair, at a price which is high, because these are also cumulated, and also a price which is justified to facilitate the environmental integrity of the credits that are actually generated from a country like Bhutan, which is heavily forest intensive. I will pause here and hopefully contribute later in terms of what kind of capacity building support could go in facilitating this and how an aggregating platform of this sort could be replicated in the Indian context. Thank you.
Thanks, Ritu. I think carbon markets are very live or a very hot area, but there are several issues, including the cost of compliance. How do we meet that, as well as capacity building? So the aggregation model which is suggested, of course, that's a very, very functional model which is there. I would now like to call upon Dr. Cheshta Kapuria from Invest India.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Cheshta from Invest India. Invest India, just to give a brief bio about Invest India, it is a Central Investment Promotion Facilitation Hub. It's an IPA, it's a national IPA of the country. And what we work on basically in this sector towards businesses, SMEs, and carbon or net zero emissions is that we build upon forward and backward linkages. In terms of bringing forward linkages, we work with partners like Startup India. We have our in-house these of sort of like national window systems where we have grievances addressal. So one of the things that MSME needs to build upon is the information asymmetry. I truly agree upon that from the inputs that we have received here. Information asymmetry leads to a non-accessible financial system. Now, on that linkage, what we work on is providing consultations on policies like CBAM, working with partners like the Government of India, with the states, and how we can facilitate these information asymmetry for the SMEs. Moving on to the forward linkages, what we work on is making partnerships for these SMEs, how we can provide them a platform for that. So what we do is we take these SMEs, basically select them and bring them to a platform to make them accessible to these sort of informations, these sorts of policies and ecosystems, where they could have climate-driven approach, energy efficiency approaches, and basically a motive towards the net zero emissions. In Invest India, what we have are two of the success stories which I'll be discussing ahead. One of them is NSWS, which is the National Single Window System, where we are collaborated with close to 25 states and UTs and have close to 4.9 lakhs applications registered with us of SMEs. The second one is the Startup India, now which would be a separate initiative of the Government of India, where we have supported close to millions of businesses. Now those businesses from 2016 have come across as unicorns or sunicorns, but were once micro or small enterprises. And through that, we had worked upon creating bridges of seed funding for them. And that's how we move on to creating an ecosystem for these businesses around in the country. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheshta. I think Invest India is the flagship program of India, and it is highly successful. And you called on, from some examples on setting up the national single window system. I think that improves the ease of doing business, as well as creates or gives a matchmaking platform, for matching up financiers with industries. I also now call upon Huma Saif Qazi from the CDP to take the floor.
Hi everyone, and thank you for having me here and to be able to address such esteemed audiences. So I'm Huma Kazi. I'm leading sustainable finance vertical of CDP Global, not just in India but also worldwide. And since I'm representing the organization which is the largest repository of environmental data and surfacing the right information for the Earth positive decision, so I'll be speaking in my deliberations on the how corporate action is driving climate action and mobilizing the finance in the right direction. So what CDP is doing for SMEs is that recently, last year only, we have launched our SME questionnaire to cater to the needs of the data and to close the visibility gap that is even more pronounced for SMEs and small businesses in the entire ecosystem. And we also believe that we cannot have we cannot build a resilient planet without building the very backbone of the entire ecosystem of the global economy, which are SMEs. So for that, last year only CDP launched its SME questionnaire, and I'll be happy to share the number in my deliberations for emerging economies. But overall, the number has been like really encouraging. More than 12,000 global SMEs have reported to us. And what we're doing is to trying to link the SMEs to the financial ecosystem and to bridge that gap which SMEs face in terms of mobilizing finance. So what we are doing is to build on the access to capacity and access to capital and entire business efficiency of the SME ecosystem. So that is one thing that CDP has done recently to upscale SMEs, and we're also quite closely working with standards and frameworks such as IFRAJ to build the capacity of the entire SMEs. And we are not just providing the platform for SMEs to report, we're also providing them with the sound guidance and reporter guidance, how they have to report, where they have to focus their attention, where they have to build their capacity, where they have to act. So everything end to end we provide to the SMEs, and that's the reason we have seen such an encouraging number this year. And I'll be happy to share a few case studies from CDP as we move forward in our deliberation through our supply chain financing program coming from Singapore, US, developing economies, a mix of that. So yeah, I'll stop there. I'm happy to be a part of the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Huma. I think the reporting platform which you mentioned, CDP is well known for that. And there are certain issues, that reporting should not create too many frameworks, and it should not add to the cost of compliance for SMEs. It should be simple framework. We need the data, but that's what should be kept in mind. Now I'll call upon our very special guest, Jenny Dodson from WSDS, to give a more global, holistic perspective on SME financing.
I don't think I'm a special guest. It's wonderful to be here, and so interesting to hear about all of the examples of work that you're doing. So I'm the Senior Director for Policy and Advocacy at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. We work with multinationals around the world, many in India, as well as with partners in specific countries, including the CII here in India, on a collective action by businesses to accelerate sustainable development. And for our businesses, most of their emissions are through their scope 3. They're through their upstream and downstream supply chains. And so really now it is a challenge of their supply chain engagement. How do they work with their thousands of suppliers around the world to enable the transition? And this is extremely challenging. SMEs are not a single monolith. They are multiple, very varied. Their capability, their expertise, their focus is very different in different places, I'm sure you'll know. And I think a lot of our businesses are really wrestling with this challenge of capacity, knowledge, and incentives for their work as well. I was just at a meeting we were held last week in India, and they were saying, why would they invest in their suppliers when that's just helping their competitors, right? So there are these real challenges around the incentives. So some of the things that we are seeing that are working, and happy to share more now later. So around procurement, really engaging with the procurement offices of big companies. These are people who are engaging directly with suppliers, and enabling them to have supply financing mechanisms that can help to use the balance sheets of big businesses to enable smaller companies to access credit lines through, for instance, their commitments to supply to these bigger companies. Preferential access. Some of the data and reporting as an encouragement to access to contracts, technical assistance and supporting that. So we also do something called the Climate Drive, and there's an SME Climate Hub that provides lots of data and information for smaller businesses. And I think another thing that we're seeing as well is around another type of SME around innovation and startups. And a lot of businesses coming together around co-investing in funds that can enable support for startups to scale, and then provide the direct access to businesses that can help them to get to scale and provide them to tackle their solutions. So I think it's a really interesting space, and I think how we connect the dots between the SMEs, the businesses, and the financing is super interesting. Thanks.
Thanks, Jenny. I think the key point which I take away is it's not only about finance, it's about the entire ecosystem development to support the financing of SMEs. So in the first 15 minutes, we sort of heard some opening statements and some interventions. In the next 15, I would like to call upon other players in the room as well as who want to intervene. And I'll start with Ms. Mitali Nikore. Yes. Yeah, please, Mitali. And thereafter, whoever wants to speak, can please raise their hands.
Thank you so much. So firstly, a big hi to everyone in the room. A lot of familiar faces from the World Bank and the ADB, both of which are my biggest clients. So very happy to be here. We are a very small, tiny startup, I would say, or a small think tank. A youth-led think tank that focuses on gender mainstreaming as one of our major focus areas. But of course, a lot of this is from the lens of working in industrial development and bringing in gender mainstreaming from the view of women being equal access holders to new jobs that are being created, new businesses that are being created. And within that, obviously, the climate and gender intersection is something that we work on extensively. In the last 2 days, actually, I've had the fortune of being with the Ministry of Labour in a 2-day conference to just speak about enhancing women's labour force participation. And I want to link that agenda, which is a larger agenda to increase female labour force participation, with the discussion we're having today on SME financing. Because as as Swati rightly said, about 1/5 of the SMEs in India are actually women-led. Now, out of these, only maybe 1% even graduate to a small or medium status. A large majority of these continue to be what we call as solopreneurs. Literally one-person-led enterprises, and they're never able to even hire somebody to work with them. In that situation, when we expect these women-led enterprises to come and adapt and take actions for mitigation and resilience, it is almost impossible for them to move away from the day-to-day business as usual and take mitigation and resilience actions. Second, they are the most vulnerable, these women-led enterprises, to the effects of climate change, because they are the first ones who will be out of a business when such a situation occurs. And thirdly, in the future of green jobs and the future of green businesses, they're the ones who are least exposed to new technologies, to be able to come up and innovate and to lead this effort, even though, of course, we celebrate the success of many best practices, right? There are huge number of women across this country and across South Asia who are leading on the agenda of adaptation and who are coming up with traditional approaches which can be applied to adaptation. And yet, when it comes to converting that into a business, the access to finance question starts to hit them the most. So in this situation, my view is that we have to start focusing on linking this agenda with the broader agenda of female labor force participation and bringing in a lot more skill training as well as reservation in terms of financing, which is then directed towards women-led enterprises for bridging this gap overall, but specifically with a gender lens within the green and climate change agenda.
Thanks, Mitali. I think as far as I know, the government has taken some measures. There are some specific tenders where women are supposed to participate, and hopefully the larger question also remains, who's going to fund and finance all these activities, and that's one of the issues.
Who's going to bell the cat?
So now I open the floor. I see some people in the room. If anyone wants to intervene, maybe Yeah, Soumya from GGGI.
Thanks, Mr. Kapil. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm from Global Green Growth Institute. I'm country head here in India. So GGGI as an international and intergovernmental organization, we're active in more than 50 countries. And the kind of work that has gone into the SME sector particularly helps supporting to the entire ecosystem, the policymakers, the industries, the financial institutions, even the service providers in the supply chain. So that has been quite interesting. We have done the works in the Thailand auto part sector in bringing a different financing model, particularly where the investments are done by a service provider, which is called as an ESCO, and the repayment is made through a mechanism called on-bill financing model. So where the entity, the industry, which has been benefited, will have to pay back to the service provider through the monthly energy bills, which in any case he was paying to the utility. So that's the different model. We also tried that model here in India in Surat cluster and other clusters as well. I was earlier with Energy Efficiency Service Limited as well as in Bureau of Energy Efficiency. So I've seen this sector, the way it has responded in the recent past. One of the important factor which Mr. Kapil told about the high cost of the capital. So one point here is that why the industry, why the SME will take the financing, unless otherwise he sees a value in this. That means energy transition, accepting the fact that they have to do it, but investing, the upfront investment becomes a big, big concern for them. So now that means they don't want to do the upfront investment. That means investment has to be done by a provider, service provider in the form of ESCO. So what does it mean? That the cost of the entire project has to be reduced. And one of the basic, the classic example what we saw here is the demand aggregation, the economy of scale. So that means the standard efficient technologies are identified, which we did in many, many clusters here. So that will actually reduce a cost of about 25 to 30% of the world. So that's the margin, and that will equivalent to a capex subsidy, which in any case government would have given. So that is being avoided. Now, if that service provider takes that lending from a bank, say for an example, SIDBI or any other, so that is the different risk component comes to that. Whether the bank who is lending that money to the service provider as a demand aggregation model, whether this bank will be repaid from that thing or not. So in that case, the World Bank supported the scheme on the PRSF, the partial risk sharing facility, backed by a climate technology fund. So that was very, very interesting, where 40% of the default risk that was covered from that, that fund was invoked only once there is a default from the suppliers, the repayment side. The other one what we see is that whether to try is the business model or the technology. That is also another thing which needs to be seen. What we have seen in the recent past in the Indian SME cluster is that everything is free. Give them a grant and the technology is demonstrated, and then, so in my view, as I have spent in the government many, many years, the pilots are, pilots never fail, but they also never scale. So that's, please try to understand that. So in that case, the piloting of the business models is extremely important, where the technologies needs to be demonstrated, where the investment which is done by anybody, that has to be paid back. And that is what we did in ESL. In the Global Environment Facility funded project, is $3 million project, fund came from JEF, and we did it in 10 clusters, 20 technologies we tried, but it was not free. But it was an interest-free investment to be done, but the industry has to pay back from the monetized energy saving that is made. So the technologies were chosen so that is 2.5 to 3 years of payback period, and that money came back to us, to ESL, and then ESL and SIDBI, they created a revolving fund with that seed money that is created. So those kind of innovative mechanisms are extremely important. Access to the financing is definitely there, but the point is that preparation from the SME in the project preparation, getting that project approved from the thing, whether he talked about the collaterals and entire thing, these are extremely important. So the robustness in the entire practice is there, but the silver lining is that the industry is trying to understand the situation right now. Mechanisms are there. success stories are there, and we need to accelerate from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Soumya. I think I was wondering when you will come to innovation in business models, and you did speak about it. Of course, the demand aggregation, which was undertaken by ESL, is the big success story, and ESCO's sort of yet to take off. We've always been saying that, but we need to understand that we need to make businesses and sustainability profitable. If we don't make sustainability profitable, then there is no way forward. So I'll turn over to Ms. Pratna Bora for her intervention.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. So I work for a risk management company, and we work with SMEs in the UAE and India and the UK. So actually, this is not a problem of the country, but you have a perspective from even the the developed economies. Our work is actually on the other side in terms of why the financing is required, so creating the right narrative for the SMEs. What we are trying to do is create simple narratives, but also data-driven narratives. We help in supporting the generation of the data, the emissions accounting, the risk assessment, so that the SME has the right kind of a narrative while going for the financing. We have developed some simplified models based on global frameworks that SMEs can adhere to, but we also support the entire development of the approach paper or the strategy or the decarbonization narrative that is required. We have 3 approaches. We work closely with the Indian Ministry of MSMEs, primarily in helping in the capacity building part. This is mostly connected to how we can support global regulations, including the CBAM. The second is working with specific clusters. So we work with MSME clusters in different regions in the country, where we take it as a whole, so it's not just one plant, but we bring them together, because as we heard, that they are very small units, so it's sometimes very difficult to work with only a single unit, so we actually bring them together. So we work with MSME clusters, and it depends. It could be based on a sector approach, or it could be a regional approach, depending on who the partner is. And the third is that we look at supply chains. So from the procurement perspective at larger companies, so we have clients who are larger companies who kind of adopt their supply chain and help to kind of develop these narratives. So we don't really look at the financing ourselves. What we do is we facilitate the data and the information that is required for the for a SME or SME cluster to get the data, the narrative because ultimately, when you go to a bank, you need structured data, you need information, but it's very easy to say that we'll get it, but who's going to facilitate that? So we are like a mediator, and we help in the information processing, as well as also, looking at partnerships to kind of facilitate that process. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Pratna. I think you clearly brought forward, again, taking over from Soumya on aggregation and how do we use SME clusters to create some kind of a standardized model, because the challenges are the same, the processes are the same. How can we facilitate that? And that's a big takeaway from there. There are some people from SIDBI in the room. Like to introduce yourself.
Myself, Anand Jha. I'm an environment expert at SIDBI. So currently we are working with 2 to 3 multinationals. One is the World Bank, second one is KFW, and now we have recently got funding from Green Climate Fund. So basically we are into decarbonization of the industrial sector. So one is through the energy efficiency, then it is solar rooftops, and now we are into EVs also. So basically for us, the biggest challenge what we are facing through the MSMEs is the compliance part, which it comes to the environment and social, which they aren't aware of. And what we are doing is we are doing the capacity building for them, so that they understand what is the significance of that. And the most important thing which you talked about was the profitability. So if we are getting into the greener space, what profit they are having by adopting mechanisms or those machineries, that they have to be communicated. And that is why, that is how we are trying to inculcate in them that, okay, you can shift to this technology, your electricity bills will come down, and in a larger role you will be gaining from this shifting to this technology. Secondly, we are into mitigation, we are there. Now we will be getting into adaptation part also. But that is in an initial stage because very few MSMEs are there which are into climate adaptation and resilience part. So basically we are doing some capacity building measures and some stakeholder engagement so that people do understand and people come up with startups with respect to the climate disasters or disaster preparedness, or maybe some kind of early warning systems, so that can be so that they can be funded for those kind of startups. So we are into that thing, and that's all.
Thanks, Anand, for telling us about what SIDBI is doing. I'd like to quickly close this session in 1 minute. Overall, my impressions are one, that there is actually no dearth of financing. It needs to be, finance needs to flow to projects which are viable for funding, and therefore all of this needs to be de-risked. The second is that we need an ecosystem approach. Financing does not stand in isolation. There has to be capacity building, there has to be data-driven approaches, there have to be standardized models. And the last is, we all are here so that we can facilitate some kind of SME financing. And hopefully we'll be able to collaborate with all of you in the near future as we go ahead and make this happen. Thank you, and I hand over the floor to my esteemed colleague, Sombul.
Thanks, Kapil. Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible. Yeah, okay, that's great. So building off of what many of you are alluding to, cost of capital, de-risking, need for capacity building, we'd like to now kickstart the second round of discussion. So a lot of what we focused on previously was the current state, hearing from you best practices and what's working well, also what's not working. Right now at this point, we'd like to dive into the two questions that are on the screen. So first, what do you think, based on your experience, are the key top priority actions that ecosystem actors really need to focus on and prioritize? So this could be, let's say, from the short to the long term, but based on your experience being either a financial institution, an enabler overall, a research organization, philanthropic, what do you think are these top, let's say, 1 or 2 actions that really, really need to be prioritized? And also building on this, what do you think is a roadmap, or what does a roadmap look like in the near future on building climate resilience of small and medium businesses, especially in emerging markets? And we'd really love to know also, based on your experience, I think, what do you think has really worked well? And based on that, what do you think can continue to work well, especially in the long term? I'd like to also, especially encourage those of you who are working very closely with SMEs, but not just in terms of financing, but also capacity building. We know that many of the participants here in the room have a special focus on directly working in terms of enabling credit and on lending to SMEs. But we'll also like to hear from many of you who are in the advisory space, research space, and also really working together, let's say, with larger corporations or business associations on these topics. With this in mind, I'd like to invite GIZ, Kritika, who works in the energy space, to share a bit more on what you think the key actions are and what the roadmap looks like.
Thank you. Thanks, Sombul, and very good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kritika. I'm part of the energy cluster at GIZ India. I come here wearing different hats, speaking about the many interventions that GIZ does. Bit of a German comma here, but that was unintended. Right. So I think one of the key things that I take away from the discussions is that, and this is our learnings from the support in terms of technical assistance that we are providing to the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy on their flagship scheme on solar water pumps, is that how is it that we are providing certain access and capacities to these developers to develop small-scale solar-powered plants. And here I'm looking at farmers who have been expected to understand the length and breadth of project financing, of cash flow, so on and so forth, with absolutely no access to, the CAs of the world or the tax and regulatory consultants of the world to help them, build this up. So what is it that we are doing to enable SMEs to access some of the existing structures that are there? So while I may be coming from the space of PM Kusum, but I think these access to the existing policies and schemes of the government needs to be looked at very closely. Another thing that we are working on, of course, something that Mitali and Swati both have mentioned is how is it that we bring innovation in financial products. And that is something that we've had the fortune to do directly with financial institutions to create new products for, gender responsive products for adoption of small scale solar powered technologies, some productive use technologies. And here I think the learning has been that while it has been extremely tough to bring these financial institutions even to roundtables like these and for them to actually come up and design these products, blending is something that worked well for us. And this has been at a very small scale through some of the pilots that we've done in Odisha, where we had very small scale corporations pledge their CSR money for this kind of a support. So why don't we have more conversations around that and how private capital can actually help blend and create these financial products. And then thirdly, it'll take a few seconds here, is that, and very different here is that last September, India and Germany came together to launch the India-Germany platform for investments in renewable energy worldwide. This is something that we are conceptualizing with the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy at the moment, but it is extremely clear also from the German side that the focus of Germany towards the Indian private sector, especially the MSME, not the big corporations who are already having this access to capital, to the support systems, both in terms of the state support mechanisms, for example. So what is it that we're doing to encourage SMEs to get access to this capital is something that the platform will be working towards. So I also, it is an open invitation, of course, would love to speak with people at the end of the session about this as well. But back to you, Sombul.
Thank you so much, Kritika. I really appreciate that. I think understanding a bit more also on what advanced countries and their governments are investing in, I think that signposts and signals to us the real importance of driving investments, capacity building, and really shining a spotlight on industries and sectors where action is needed and it's immediately happening. Thank you so much for that. I'd also like to invite everybody else, of course, in the room to share a bit more on how do you see these priority actions working? What do you think works best? I'd also like to call on India Climate Collaborative if they're still here in the room. We'd love to know a bit more on the work that you've been doing with your partners, including, of course, with CEW and a couple of others. Thanks. We just get you a mic. Thanks, Abhishek.
Thank you. Hi, this is Abhishek Saxena from India Climate Collaborative. So we've been working on a global South cooperation program with key economies like Brazil, South Africa, and Indonesia. We are looking at different areas of climate collaboration and intervention. So some of the areas that we have looked at is biofuels. We are looking at financing. We are looking at subnationals. Among that, we are looking at different areas where there is an essential need for collaboration and there is something to learn from each other in that. What we've seen specific to this question, on SME financing is that there is a lot of pre-preparedness, what you call the project preparedness activities that has to essentially take place before any MSME, is at the level of accepting that finance. So there is like a lot of panel members mentioned that there is no dearth of financing available in the country. There are a lot of mechanisms, but to accept that, there has to be a lot of project preparedness activities that has to go before that. And secondly, what also needs to happen is, especially for the climate resilience, there has to be some level of transition planning that has to take place. And that transition planning would vary very differently from an automobile SME to a textile SME to a fertilizer SME to a steel MSME. Second qualification that I really want to bring in, and I think that was related to the last question, is that from the context, and we've looked at how it works in Brazil and in India, the MSME as an ambit is not an homogeneous entity. So a micro entity of India would not have so much in consonance with the medium as entity in Brazil. So we have to have very differentiated intervention and levers for these different sets. And obviously the interventions would differ in the areas of different industries also. So like I touched upon that a steel MSME would very different, the intervention in steel MSME areas would look very different from the one in fertilizers and then the one in textiles. So so yeah, this is the area that we are working at. We are looking at different areas of biofuels also, and you know, sometimes the conversation on MSMEs gets focused in the manufacturing sector, but there is a lot of focus in the agricultural space also. And how does that fit into the complete value chain? It should be looked at from an energy transition perspective, but there is a wider ambit also that we should look at from an MSME space. So I'll keep that.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. It's really great to know a bit more on ICC's work. We also understand that you've been working very closely with India-based partners as well, like CEW and others, to really make sure that the philanthropic capital that you're deploying is catalytic, and it sort of encourages a chain reaction in a positive way to really bring in a lot of ecosystem players together and drive the funding where it's needed the most. So thank you for that. You know, building off of what Abhishek also mentioned, research organizations sort of play a really major role here in binding together, providing a lot of insights that can drive the direction of sort of financing where it's going, where it's needed most. In that context, I'd also like to invite Terry. We have Amshika here from the Energy and Resources Institute. They've been a fantastic partner, and we'd love to know a bit more from you, Amshika, on the energy space, Terry's research initiatives in this space, and what you see the future like in this context.
Thank you so much for inviting me. So I would like to talk about the policy and regulatory environment. So we at TERI are working at evaluating a huge UN project on PM KUSUM, and we see that why component A and C has not taken off is because of optimal tariffs. And so the tariffs sort of offered by the discoms are too low for the SMEs to sort of invest in you know, component A and C, while the component B has really taken off, you know. Component A and C has only achieved 3% of its sort of targets. And so essentially the regulatory environment around this is very, very important on how we set tariffs. Secondly, obviously, sort of talking about climate financing, and I had actually what you were talking about, the PRSFs. I evaluated that World Bank project. I was at the World Bank before. And so what we saw, like, you know, when you talk about concessional finance or blended finance or contingent finance, it's the main reason that World Bank or any development institution intervenes is because we want to share the risk or provide a guarantee for investment, to sort of enable investments. And that is the reason why the PRS was set up to involve, to sort of deploy a guarantee. But the way they sort of also sequenced the projects was they set up a PRSF, which was sequenced with the energy efficiency scale-up project, which basically provided capacity building. So the sequencing was also very, very important. It was not just setting up the energy efficiency scale-up project or the PRF, but they were put together, and contingent finance was provided and not concessional finance, because that sort of still we want to sort of not make the ESCOs totally dependent on concessional financing, so that, you know, they can sort of help them grow and not become dependent. So I think and also blending is obviously viable, but do we also have a policy, a regulatory environment for blended finance to be successful? Blended finance may not be successful in all scenarios. It was very successful in in Mexico, where a development bank called FIRA was provided blended finance and consensual finance to a climate financing organization to provide agricultural pumps. So I think when we think about financing, it's also important on how we deploy financing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amshika. That's a great perspective. We'd also like to invite CPI, if Deval is here, to share a bit more on climate policy initiatives work and the sort of direction that, let's say, the research is taking, or what do you see as critical in the near future? Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me here, and sorry for coming in late. So Climate Policy Initiative is a research and advisory organization across the world. We work in actually tracking and enabling finance into various climate positive segments and climate positive initiatives. So, and SMEs worldwide is a special focus area. And what we typically do is, as I mentioned, that we are in the in the role of enabling capital. So we have something called a innovation lab, which is basically an incubation center for financing solutions for especially small kind of in SMEs, as well as technology startups which are working in the climate tech space and providing solutions. In India, we were talking about, there was a lot of talk about project preparation, and we have been running a couple of project preparation facilities where we are not only looking at debt ready SMEs, but also in terms of the technology startups, because that is exactly where I think I think there's a big gap in terms of financing, which is not really apparent. And this is typically in the range of the Series A, Series B kind of a capital, which is beyond the seed capital. I mean, in India, we are not able to get that kind of a capital. There are not many impact investors also who will provide that risk capital. So we kind of try to do certain things which is not only in terms of financial advisory, but also in terms of the technical assistance, in terms of hand-holding them through market assessment or technical feasibility and market linkages and all that, legal documentation, legal structuring of their enterprises and their initiatives. So all these things we are doing, and I think that is one area which needs to be broad-based, and more such initiatives need to be in place. But also, I think in the institutional setup of financing, we need to have a much greater focus there. And here I would like to bring in the concept of a green bank, which, of course, to some extent we are seeing the role being played by SIDBI. In agriculture, the role is being played by NABARD. But frankly speaking, we need such large institutions which are public purpose and which are well capitalized, which can provide that kind of a risk capital for these early stage enterprises. And that is where I think our programs, CPI's programs have succeeded to some extent. But if we see that wherever the shortcomings have been, I think it is because there has not been that kind of a institutional approach in terms of laying the ground for SMEs to actually come up to the level of being having a operating cash flow, positive operating cash flow kind of a situation. The other thing that I would like to add is that when we talk about SME financing, we look at generally the mitigation aspects, but we have to also understand that just as we have differentiated responsibilities, we have differentiated vulnerabilities across countries and within country sectors, also in terms of the industries. In SMEs, just because of the extreme heat stress that we talk about in India, there are about 100 billion hours per annum of work that is lost, and that is something like 35 million workers working for 8 hours per day. And just imagine that kind of a workforce is suddenly moved out, and although they are working, but but that much of productivity is not there. So this, and especially this is in the context of SMEs, because these are the ones which are more vulnerable rather than the corporates, where the people can sit in their air-conditioned offices and all that. So there, I think we need a much focused resilience financing approach, which is providing cool roofs or green roofs, or maybe having local cooling solutions, which are for a certain cluster. Things can be worked out in that manner. So I'll kind of stop here, and maybe I think I'll probably participate later on. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Deval. That was really insightful. So we have the last 10 minutes of our open discussion left, and I'd like to invite any of you, if you would like to step up right now. WRI?
Yes. So I just wanted to compliment on what point you mentioning about, first of all, is this word of resilience. When you go to MSMEs, sustainability is heard about. People understand mitigation, but adaptation is absolutely, it is far away. And when we talk about these studies, that how productivity is getting lost, so WRI is taking a heat mapping study. We have already done it in Surat. We are taking it up in other parts also. We are also seeing that the vulnerability. So we are also taking the vulnerability assessment survey with 150 units in Surat we have already done, and 150 in Tamil Nadu. And we found the same thing. Like MSMEs in Chennai, even in Chennai, you will see they are compartmentalized. So if you are in Ambattur, you are having the issues related to the pond got burst out, you have got flooding issues. But when you go to Tirumadakkam and other places, those issues are not there. And then how you are going to solve for it? Who is going to give you loans? Because these are the things which are not directly linked to your production, but it impacts a lot. So in our research also, in our interviews with the owners, we understood that after the incidents, everybody wakes up and talks about everything, and then eventually it goes off. So these are the things, these are embedded issues, this is going to rise, but we have to come up for those things. Research has to be focused on these activities, how productivity has to be brought out. And then when you go more into it, more issues get unearthed. So when we talk about women, we recently wrote a piece about women participation in MSMEs. We have been to a bigger corporate, and then we have been to MSMEs. We have done the differentiation studies, that how the corporates are supporting women. And then the lens of ESG is coming up, the social angle is coming up, how you are going to solve for it, how you take everyone, all the ecosystem players. So we are trying that, and through the initiative which we call it as RISE, Resilient, Inclusive and Sustainable Enterprises. And through that we are trying to attempt all these things, and we are still open for collaboration. Any institute wants to come up in this project, we are still working for another 1.5 years in both these places and expanding. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I saw a few names here at the back as well, right? Would you like to go, and then we can go this way?
Yeah, I would actually like to address the question which is on the board here, which is basically, something like timing of climate proofing. It's now. It's not about, we don't have much time. And for this, I think the two critical things which I feel are relevant is, one is that we should have simple business models that work. And we know about them. We need to simplify. There are many examples which are financially viable, and they are simple business models. Like having a solar rooftop does work, irrespective of what kind of industry the SME is working in. Even at micro level, it does work. Second is, we need to de-jargonize the message. I think all of us, when we talk about, we need to de-jargonize, which is something understandable by the SME we are, the audience, the target audience we are referring to. And I think these two are something which is very critical when we are working in the space of capacity building or research or reaching out to the SME to keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think there's somebody at the back as well. I'm not able to see. Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Digvijay. I work with GSMA. We represent mobile operators globally. A part of our division also does innovation funding. We support startups in development. And what sort of we promote is that digital can offer a lot of benefits when it comes to lending. There are a couple of examples that we have tested and worked out in the past. For example, Credible here in India is a fintech which sort of works on invoice-based financing. They support in capacity building, as many of you have mentioned, in teaching them IT skill, but digitizing those invoices really helps in the finance to come in. Couple of examples from Bangladesh. ATech is a clean cooking startup which sort of works on digital monitoring and verification of your clean cook stove. So how much is consumed, the carbon credits that get generated are actually digitally monitored, right? So a couple of more examples. There's a agri-tech startup in Kenya which sort of uses satellite imagery to see the credit worthiness of farmers, right? The point that I'm trying to make, and I keep it short, is that digital offers a lot of value when it comes to financing. We did a bit of a research and happy to share and have conversations on what we found and the role that digital can play broadly. Thank you.
Thank you, Digvijay.
Hello, good afternoon everyone. I am Ravi from NABARD. I am working as a development manager at the district level. I am happy to be a part of this summit. Sir, what I would like to tell you is actually, we have told that there is no depth of credit, but the cost of credit is the most important thing. Right now, most of the MSME sector is being financed by NBFCs. And the cost of NBFCs, generally their operational cost is at higher side. So, and the traditional banking, they offer at lower interest rates. So, this factor we have to take into picture while, and a policy to subsidize MSMEs to compete with the current picture, because whenever the cost of credit goes up, during the last 3 years, the cost of even the credit growth of MSMEs has been very high. So taking now, if the cost of credit through NBFC is coming, so the overall credit growth again, it may come to stagnation. This is one of the biggest factors which may come into hurdle for MSMEs. And as per the data which was provided as of December 2024, there were about 57 million MSMEs registered formally. But as per NSSO statistics, there were about 90 million MSMEs registered in available in the country. So about 33 million are still in informal sector. So how to bring this informal sector into this great picture? That is also one of the major important things to make these MSMEs more viable. And as our people have told, few people have told that women workforce is increasing in MSMEs. That is very good thing. In fact, at the ground level, there are self-help group women who are actually contributing to the MSME sector. However, a few challenges were there. The major challenge is they need a lot of training, and most of the women, they don't like to come out of their homes and comfort zone. That is one of the biggest factor which we are finding at the ground level. So to make them come out of this comfort zone, a lot of human approach and human resource trainings are required. And moreover, at the ground level, more MSMEs are facing this marketing problem of their produce. This also has to be addressed while providing this providing solutions for this MSME sector as a whole. And I do not know actually whether I would whether I can use this word, because MSMEs has to be deregulated from these working hours, because they have to be enabled 24/7 working hours rather than only for a few hours, maybe from 9 to 9, because most of the MSME people who are working at the ground level, they are really starved. They want to work more. But based on our regulations, because of government regulations, the MSMEs cannot work in the night. So if government brings some kind of changes in these policies, it will be really helpful for the MSME sector. And as we are, as you are aware, actually, NABARD is financing a lot of startups, especially agri startups. Only in Telangana, in the state of Telangana, for an agriculture university, we have provided some fund for Ag Hub and ENAM. So we have received about 700 startups. So there is no dearth of startups who are ready to work for the agri sector, or who are willing to become the partners of MSMEs, and they may become unicorns in the future. However, the access to the credit for these for these startups has become a real challenge, because they are not most of the banks or financial institutions, they are finding it very difficult to finance these startups, because for them it looks the project or the overall cost benefit ratios, immediately it will not look lucrative or even financeable. So how to address this challenge is also a big issue. And as you all aware, as per the latest CMI data from March or May 2024, the overall agriculture workforce has come down from 168 million, and the overall service sector workforce has improved, because now service sector is the largest sector contributing in the country. Now most of the agriculture workforce has moved towards service sector, so they will be in the MSME sector, in the service, or in some kind of in the production. So how do you address this demographic dividend change? So this is also because most of them have definitely moved into MSME sector or some kind of a production sector. So how do we address this change? This is also an important sector we have to find out. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, thank you. So we'll actually be taking a final one comment if somebody would like to intervene at the back.
I can speak very loud. You can hear me now? Yeah, okay. So my name is Laura Canevari. I'm the CEO and founder of Ithaca Solutions, an SME based in Panama and acting as a technical assistance service facility committed to accelerating climate change adaptation in the Caribbean. I just wanted to share with you an example of a project we did recently in our region, which is highly replicable here as well. So in our region, we realized that one of the challenges or the reluctance that commercial banks face when investing in climate smart technologies and SME-driven adaptation or mitigation companies is the fact that they don't really understand the technologies, their business models, and their risk profiles. So the IDB Invest, which is the investment branch of the Inter-American Development Bank, set up a pilot project in Honduras, which consisted on 3 phases. On phase 1, we identified the risks to the portfolio of the aggregate portfolio of commercial banks in Honduras, both transition risks and physical risks. On phase 2, we characterize the different technologies and opportunities that there are for investing in different activities and technologies that would reduce those risks, therefore building the resilience of those portfolios. This entailed talking to different technology providers, building fact sheets of their risk profiles and their business models. And on stage 3, we created a space, a physical space for interaction between the commercial banks and the technology providers. What this allows is for the banks to familiarize themselves with the technologies, and in doing that, not only will they be investing in solutions that are going to reduce the risks in their portfolios, but they're also increasing the financial flows to those SMEs. So that model has been proven very successful, as now there are green credit lines that are being drawn from that study towards the building of those SMEs, and we think that that's something that perhaps could also be valuable in this part of the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that perspective, and also sharing that perspective in the terms of having that Latin America regional sort of angle. Really appreciate that perspective being brought into the discussion. Unfortunately, we're going to be closing for open comments, and yes, yeah. Yeah.
So hi, I'm Dr. Sudeep Kaur from Punjab University. We work for DST Government of India also, PSM division. We work for the policy research, and what I want to highlight is that recently we conducted a study with the UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization. There they have this program, this is FLCTD program, that is low carbon emission, where they give grants actually to the, when we talk about the startups which are actually working for this, reducing the carbon footprints. There they actually targets on, that's why I wanted to highlight. So there they have the different stages. They do not give funding at the earlier stages, but they actually give funding to, come out of the death valleys at the later stage, because there many of the esteemed experts were talking about that we need to work upon on the project planning and on the transition states. actually we are also working closely with them on that part only, because that we feel as because we also represent the government, some part of that, providing the recommendation over that. So we are coming up with a technology transfer policy also recently, and there actually we are hitting on these points, that how we can bring forward to enhance or strengthen the MSME sector. Particularly we are working on that, and we are moving towards SMEs also. So yes, we are also taking up, and also there is one thing that in UN we have this TNA, which is Technology Assessment Network, is that CTCN is there. Those networks also greatly provide and helps in answering these types of questions also. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that closing remark. So we just wanted to mention that we'll be having our high-level champion Nigar Arpadarai, the appointed champion for COP29, joining us virtually now for closing remarks. Thank you so much for all your insights, and we're here in the room. There's also lunch arranged, so we're looking forward to continue engaging with you. Thank you so much. Hi, Nigar. I think we're just setting this up. Yeah.
Hello,
Hi,
dear
Nigar.
friends, can you hear me? Hi.
Hi, Nigar, we
I
can hear
think
you.
there was a technical problem. Great. I can see you and I can hear you well. Dear friends, it's a great honor to be here to address you as the UN Climate Change High-Level Champion. And I'm happy to see some familiar faces in this room, and I'm happy to remember one more time the way and the road that we've gone through all together. It was a great year last year, and thank you very much for contributing to the success of COP29. Just to remind you that we all, COP29 was successful with its significant breakthrough, where 1.3 trillion Baku finance goal was established, a new commitment to mobilize 1.3 trillion in climate finance annually for the developing world. And that represents a significant leap from the previous target of 100 billion. Can you hear me, dear friends? Because I lost you.
Yeah, Nigar, we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I will continue. So there was a number of important decisions that was made at COP29, including Article 6, including prolongation of renewal of Lima Work Program, etc. So all this was so extremely important. And in line with this, as COP29 presidency, we have also announced 14 global initiatives under the action agenda. And these presidency-led initiatives are designed to advance the climate action, encourage engagement of non-state actors, and support COP29 vision of enhancing ambition and enabling action. Building on the valuable legacy of previous launched initiatives, the COP29 presidency remains committed to ensuring synergies, coherence, and highest impact. And to achieve this, we will be collaborating with all the partners and parties and non-party stakeholders. We also created Baku initiatives for climate finance, investment and trade dialogue. This will ensure that finance, investment and trade remain at the center of the climate agenda. In parallel to this, I was personally very much supportive of the idea of having private sector closely engaged, and we've been working very closely with private sector, with business people from all around the world. And at COP29, we have launched Business Investment and Philanthropy Climate Platform, where 1,000 business, finance, and philanthropic leaders came together to discuss the climate finance, to discuss the the collaboration and the overall challenges that we are all facing. But for me, the central thing in all this was to come up with something that I truly believe, which is the support to SMEs. Because when you speak to large companies, they have resources, they have understanding of importance of green transition, they have finance in many cases, they have access to media. But when you talk to small and medium enterprises, they are lacking all this support. So we need to make sure that small and medium enterprises are at the forefront, that they are benefiting from green transition, that they are not surviving it, but they are flourishing as a result of green transition. So this is the reason I was talking to many people in the climate community, including some people in this room, that how we can make sure that SMEs are getting the focus that they need. And we have launched the Climate Proofing SME campaign, and by COP29 in Baku, we brought together over 40 campaign collaborators, reaching almost 90 million SMEs in 100 countries, including India. Because SMEs account for about 90% of all businesses and around 70% of employment worldwide, making them central to communities and the engine of the real economy. SMEs serve as a catalyst for driving economic growth, especially in emerging markets, playing a critical role, creating employment opportunities, promoting innovation, and enabling inclusive growth. Yet they continue to remain disproportionately impacted by climate-related risks and vulnerabilities. 66% of SMEs in emerging markets reported having already been affected by climate change. And this is why we created SME campaign, to empower and to enable SMEs to take ambitious climate action. By working with major corporations and financiers to enhance support for SMEs, to ensure they not only survive but thrive in the race to a healthier, more prosperous and resilient world. And we are proud to engage with our partners and collaborators. I am SME of India, and we are proud to engage with partners, and in India especially, I am SME of India for helping SMEs embrace clean energy and energy efficiency, innovating eco-friendly processes, and championing recycling and waste reduction. Low Carbon Steel Cluster Initiative for empowering steel SMEs to lead their own green transition. These organizations are empowering SMEs by making climate resources and tools not only available but accessible and actionable by SMEs. In 2025, our commitment to empowering SMEs will continue, with a focus on highlighting the central role small businesses play in shaping and implementing the collective roadmap for a new economy. If we speak about SMEs' access to finance, in emerging markets, 70% of MSMEs lack adequate financing, while 1.7 billion adults lack access to basic transaction accounts. Those without access are largely concentrated in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa and are disproportionately poor and female. So this year, Climate Proofing SME campaign will help to forge the partnerships required to scale mechanisms that provide SMEs with affordable and accessible green financing options. In conclusion, I would like to thank all of you, dear friends, our partners, collaborators, participants of the summit, for contributing to this central agenda, and I look forward to reflecting on the insights and actions from this important conversation today. You can fully rely on me that we will move forward this year. We will be pushing this idea throughout Belém, and at COP30 we want to come up with some really tangible progress in this direction. And again, thank you very much for your conversation and for putting SME as a central discussion point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nigar. Looking forward to staying connected with you. Thank you. Thanks, Sabha, for coordinating.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone so much for participating. Lunch is served and it will be on till 1:30 if I'm not wrong. So please feel free to join us for that, and we're looking forward to staying connected and continuing the conversation with you all. Thank you so much.